Welcome to Ceragon Connects, where we have candid conversations with telecom and private network leaders. On this episode, Ceragon connects with Paul Griffinstedt, founder and president of Griffin Systems, a leading integrator in security and surveillance camera networks for public safety. Griffin Systems marks its 20th year anniversary, serving a range of customers across public safety, law enforcement, education, and manufacturing. Griffin Systems works to customize its solutions to help their customers keep facilities and people safe. Chatting with us all about it is Griffin's founder and president, Paul Griffinstedt. Paul, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
20 years is an incredibly long time in any business, in any industry. And when you factor in technology, communications, public safety, I think that multiplies it by a factor of 100. Tell us a little bit about how you got started with public safety, with security cameras. What did Griffin Systems look like 20 years ago? What was the catalyst that kind of got you into things? And how do you see things changing over the past 20 years? What did that sort of evolution look like?
For sure. Yeah, it's really hard to believe it's been 20 years. I started the company as a side project, helping a friend of mine out. I was in software sales, doing really well for myself in that field, and I'm a nice enough guy that I said, hey, I know you're starting this company up at a St. Louis as a friend of mine that we used to walk our dogs together in the city when we lived in Chicago. And I started introducing him to some of my clients because he said, hey, I'm trying to get this security company off the ground. People are looking at cameras now. And I said, okay, I know nothing about that space, but let me at least get you involved in, I've seen cameras when I'm walking around my clients' sites and whatnot. And the first conversation I had with one of my clients, I realized at that point in time, the world was starting to change and people were more concerned about not only the safety of cameras, but just the overall ability with the internet and everything else of just being able to connect with your facility, with your business at any point in time from anywhere. And that kind of sparked an interest and kind of a fire in myself to say, this could be something very interesting and something that I could find passion in. And long story short, 3 months down the line, I said, okay, I'm quitting my software sales job. My wife was pregnant with our first baby, so it was perfect time to get into something completely crazy. I needed more on my plate at that point. And I just said, hey, trust me on this. I think this is going to be a good move. And I started Griffin Systems 20 years ago. My daughter was born 6 months later, and it's been a whirlwind. I mean, you can tell now if you look at the space, and cameras are everywhere. I mean, from street cameras that we really focus on, and that's a big vertical for us with police and that, but any business that you go into, from a Target to a mom and pop store to manufacturing, everyone has cameras to not only protect their business and their people, but just I like to get involved in a lot of these installations where it's more, I call it operational efficiency. You kind of just want to know if you're there or you're not there, what your business looks like, and what your, these insights that you can grab from video are immense. And it just gives you kind of that better connected feel with your company and with your business and with your municipality or whatnot. So that's, we started in the world of analog cameras, and we were building our own DVR, which is basically like a PC that would record these analog cameras. And the resolution was really poor. Smartphones started coming into play, better quality cameras, smaller cameras, better image quality. And that kind of was put into the security market as well. And we saw this unbelievable growth in image resolution and frame rate and just the ability to put a camera anywhere if you had connectivity and power. And that, things took off, obviously.
So tell me a little bit about the choice to go. I would imagine, let me put it this way, that there's a couple different directions when you go and you're starting in that space. You can keep it cheap, cheerful, easy, license plate recognition cameras, simple, relatively simple technology, or you can dig in deep and sort of build a niche, which I know you have, of really highly specialized, high quality, more demanding of better connectivity. What was the choice like there when you started out in those early days?
Yeah, I think when we first started out, I was always one of our big focuses. Our big focus was to give the best quality image that we could find out there on the market. But also, we weren't looking to do 1,000 installs a year. We were really looking for those interesting projects where we could really get passionate behind and deliver not only a camera system that we could feel proud about, but also we wanted to separate ourselves in the market. We weren't looking to become a next national player. We really wanted to focus on high resolution video, really reliable video. And as we started to get more and more involved, we started with park districts, and that kind of led us into police stations and public safety. And we really got the insight from working closely with police in these different towns that we were putting cameras for manufacturers and for companies, as well as the town itself. But just knowing what evidential quality video, what they required when they had an incident. So we really focused on, let's get the best of breed, best quality video camera, best system on the back end that was reliable and could, store this video for as long as our clients needed. But also we wanted to, this is a small company that we wanted to treat our clients like family. We want to really, at the end of the day, it was me involved in every installation with my crew. And I didn't want to show up at a client and say, I'm sorry, the video wasn't good enough, or we didn't get a license plate, or we have something, but it's, when you give it to the police, they're not going to be able to do much with it. We really wanted to provide solutions that were reliable, really high resolution, and just be really proud of them because they're, solving things. So.
Right. Yeah. I would imagine, unlike some businesses where you're selling someone a product and that's it, you never see them again or you don't see them again for years. You're really building a relationship with these customers where they have to count on you and you're there and you're supporting the installation, and you know that if it's done right, one, the customer's going to be happy, two, you're going to get a referral, and next year when they get more budget and they need to add more cameras, they're going to be calling you to provide that service. So it makes sense to want to do the best you can, and obviously if you're in a niche where you're providing quality as opposed to the base bottom price possible, then you're in a position to do that. You mentioned a few different types of applications. You mentioned manufacturing, municipalities, public safety, and of course, street cameras for police. Can you give us a little bit of coverage in addition to that, or maybe dig in a little bit more in details? 20 years is a long time. Give us a little color. Tell us about some of these installations, some of these applications.
Yeah, for sure. When we first started out, we were, looking at, small retail. And then that kind of led us into sort of hotels downtown. So we were putting, as we're walking around, we're just looking, okay, there's a camera there. Maybe we should get into this. And started, talking with hotels and getting systems in there. And then I kind of, just by driving around, driving my daughter to daycare and noticing businesses as driving around and looking, we noticed, these metal recycling yards and these scrap yards, and had no sort of interest or education about what these places do. But I noticed there were a number of cameras on their scales and everything else. And so I just started cold calling these scrap yards, and it was a small kind of niche. Everybody kind of knew everybody. Once you got in with one, it kind of led you to everyone else. And as we talked about before, it's kind of your reputation. You want to have a good reputation in this industry because everyone kind of knows everybody. And maybe it's a little with Chicago. Chicago's a big city, but it kind of acts like a small city where everybody knows everybody. Everyone has a cousin or somebody else working at some place, and they talk. It's kind of a city that's very they like getting in the mix and talking about what's good, what's bad, that kind of thing. So you want to be on the good side when people are talking about you. But it was really looking at cameras in a different way where, sure, safety and security is kind of the foundation, but if you could get into a company, either it's manufacturing or a company where you're providing a tool, which would be the camera, to affect their operation and have them rely on it and really integrate it into their business, that became the better customer because they started thinking, okay, where else can I use this camera to make my business better, not just make it a safer place or make it a healthier place for my employees and my customers. So those are some of the projects that we really, once we got in, those kind of exploded for us. And we're really just passionate about, helping people with their business and what can we do from a video or technology side to help them, grow with us. And that's, over 20 years, we've had, multiple clients where we installed cameras maybe 20 years ago, and then we've gone back another 10 years after that and upgraded their entire system, and they've grown with us as the technology has grown as well. So you get these sort of lifelong customers that continue to come back to you because they look at you as kind of you're their resource in that technology space for sure.
Sure, yeah, you become the trusted advisor and a partner. You're the people that they count on. And of course, if a decade passes without any serious issues and they know that they can count on your equipment, your installation, your service, then you're going to be the go-to people for them. I remember in one of our earlier conversations a few months back, you mentioned to me an incident with a pizza factory. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. So we got into as we were getting into manufacturing, we met more manufacturers, and you think of food manufacturing, and you don't even Chicago and just the Midwest is very manufacturing focused, and there's a lot of things that are made,
And
and you
pizza
get
focused.
definitely, and we got into these meetings where you know we're meeting with these manufacturers that were manufacturing food. And so you get into these places, and I remember being in a warehouse or a manufacturing site where they were making Triscuits, and the Triscuit was the size of like 20 feet by 15 feet, like a giant Triscuit comes out of this machine, and then they cut it all up, and they wanted to. This is not in the pizza, but it's the same kind of realm. And I'll talk about the pizza as well. But they had people watching the production line. And if one thing went wrong on the production line, in a matter of 10 seconds, you could have a pile of, 100 or 1,000 Triscuits. Or in the pizza place where we put in a video system, we noticed one thing got kind of caught. And then in the matter of 10 seconds, you had 300 pizzas all over the floor and everywhere. And they wanted to be able to take video and be very proactive instead of reactive, because before, in a matter of seconds, you have this big mess. With the cameras, they look, okay, something's going on. Let's shut down the production line. Let's fix it before we have a bigger problem. And that became, it's comical to see that video because I think our clients like to share this kind of, interesting video with us of things that have gone wrong. And that was one of the things I'm like, oh my God, this is kind of wild. But just the ability for them to use the technology and the cameras to better their production line, just you don't really think about until you get into that application. And then you're like, oh my God, this, we should put this on every production line in any manufacturer because it's got such good insight and good connection with what they're trying to do. So.
Yeah, and it seems like there's some incredible optimization opportunities there. If you can sit and see your entire production line and see where you see a pattern of slowdowns, pattern of issues appearing again and again, then that type of high level overview gives you the opportunity to tweak things and make adjustments and make substantial improvements that, as you said, small little things add up quickly and can turn into giant piles of pizza on the floor, or can turn into 20% increase in productivity, which makes a big difference when it comes to dollars at the end of the year.
Yeah,
Okay, so
it
go ahead.
also, I mean, I think it's resource allocation as well. I mean, you have these big factories and you only have so many people that work there. They have a really trouble or a tough time with getting employees that are reliable and know kind of the protocol, and having the cameras there to maybe lessen the amount of people that they need for certain areas really helps their business that way. As well as we had a number of big plants where the safety and security person would walk around with us, and they would notice some of the protocols and some of the training that they did for their employees. Certain areas weren't abiding by that, so they said, okay, this is a good time to maybe re-educate these employees, or these are new employees that maybe didn't catch that education, so let's do that so we don't have a bigger problem, whether it's the pizzas, which to them that's an issue, but if an employee or someone gets hurt, then that's a bigger issue and that's a bigger liability. So let's use the cameras to reduce that liability and reduce the need for or reduce the ability to make it a
Exposure,
safer
I would
place. Yeah,
imagine. Right, yeah, there's massive exposure to all sorts of insurance claims when you're working on a large factory with dozens or hundreds of employees, and
for
if you
sure.
have that coverage and protection of video surveillance, that's an enormous asset. Okay, so we talked about pizzas. I want to talk more about public safety in terms of small to medium-sized municipalities, small towns. I know that you've got several customers. Recently, somewhat recently, you can give us some dates, but you managed to service one. They were very happy. That led to one police chief, I believe, recommending you to a second police chief. Tell us a little bit about that town, about the scale and scope of the public safety solution that you provided for them.
Yeah, for sure. I think overall Chicago kind of leads the nation. It's probably Chicago as well as New York in street cameras and surveillance, just because it's a large city. There's a lot going on, and there's different neighborhoods, and there's really a need for safety and security overall for a lot of these towns. What that brings back to is the reliability. They're relying on very strong technology, but also reliable and very high resolution video when they have incidents, but reliable enough where we're sending a ton of video. When you have these really high resolution cameras, they're requiring a lot of bandwidth on the back end. So needing a network that's very scalable, reliable, and have the ability to distribute that much bandwidth as you're expanding this camera network, and passing along all this data back to a server or the cloud or wherever you're targeting the video to go to. You really need to look at kind of that back end architecture. And what brought us in to a conversation or a meeting was a village just in the southwest suburbs of Chicago was having problems with their network. And the existing network that ran their street cameras was failing. They were having multiple cameras that were down. The village, the video was skipping. They were missing video. It was down at certain times. It really wasn't handling the bandwidth, and really wasn't handling the what they wanted to do on a grander scheme. So we came
This
in.
is a Sorry to interrupt you. This is
Yeah.
a microwave on the backhaul. This is millimeter wave. What sort of connectivity are we talking
Yeah,
about?
so with this network, it was all 5 gigahertz point to point radios, so very low end. I would call it more. It was technology that you would put on your house, but you wouldn't put to manage hundreds of cameras on a street camera
Right.
project. So uh, we've come across projects where you could tell that maybe the project started with 2 or 3 cameras, and then all of a sudden now it's 60 cameras, and they've tried to use the same technology for the 1 or 2 cameras and just continue to band-aid it, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And that's when we were called in and said, hey, we really need help with this. What should we do? And at that point in time, I always go out to IC West, which is the big annual security show, and out in Las Vegas. And that's the time for me and my staff to go out and just look at new technology. It's mostly on the camera side. But we came across a company called Ciclu, and they had a small booth, and they were just kind of getting into this space of, and this is maybe 10 years ago, really starting to get into this space of smart city and street cameras. And we came to them and said, hey, this is kind of what we're seeing with some of our clients. We really need something that can handle a lot of bandwidth, but can be extremely reliable, because this is the video that we're dealing with. And they said, okay, here are 2 devices. Try it out. See what you think. We'd love the input on it. And once we set it up, which it's not, this was a different space for us. You know, we're used to very easy wireless. We got it set up. But once we set up the 2 radios, we were blown away by the bandwidth and the stability of the system. And just in taking the backhaul away from a 5 gigahertz radio to a 60 gigahertz radio for this client, the lagging, the loss of video, the loss of image resolution pretty much completely cleared up. And so we took a bet on this helping to fix their problem. And with that, they sold it to us saying, hey, this is really going to be what you should be designing your networks going forward with. And so
You're saying, Paul, you're saying that Ciclu at the time sold it to you, or the city sold it to you?
Ciclu sold it to me as, this is something that is going to be very helpful for what you're trying to do. And we took it as, well, we've heard a lot of things from a lot of different wireless vendors of what they could do to fix it. I'm always, the proof is in the pudding. Give me the device. We'll bring it out there. We'll test it out. And once we tested it, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what we need to move forward with. And we were, extremely happy with what we saw. And that kind of led us to that, I kind of get passionate about things, and that kind of led us to the passion behind really high bandwidth, reliable wireless point-to-point or networks. And Ciclu has been an incredible partner for us for that.
Yeah, I got to say that clearly Ceragon acquired Ciclu about a year ago. Obviously, we were incredibly impressed with their technology, with their solutions, point-to-point, point-to-multipoint, E-band and V-band as well. They've got incredible technology and incredible people, and we were happy to sort of welcome them to our family and be able to offer that to all of the existing Ceragon customers and new Ceragon customers as well, of course. So technology, no doubt. And it's incredible when you have a problem and then suddenly you find the technological solution that far exceeds your needs and gives you that sense of safety and security. And wow, okay, before technology was the problem, and now technology is the solution, and that's remarkable. And I'm happy that you were able to find Ciclu. Okay, so you start working with Ciclu. You introduce this technology. You've got in-field proof that it's going to solve the problem that you've had. Your challenges are overcome, and then you can take this to this local municipality who has, you said, about 60 street cameras?
Yes. Yeah. So that we took over that project. Now they're well over 100 street cameras. And that, as I said before, Chicago is a town that talks, and everybody kind of knows everybody. There's relations. And so one police chief talked to the neighboring police chief and said, hey, who are you using for your security cameras? I saw that you guys just did some upgrades and some ads, and they led us to Griffin Systems, and we went out, and it was very nice they had nothing. So it was very nice to go and design the system from the ground up using Ciclu, and Avigilon is our camera manufacturer, which now is owned by Motorola. But being able to start from scratch instead of repairing or fixing a broken system, just starting from ground zero and building it, it was refreshing, and it's been unbelievable. And they have, we're just getting into the second phase with that municipality to add another 40 cameras to them. So it just continues to build and build. And we noticed that, a lot of other municipalities will do street cameras, but it's mostly these LPR cameras where it's a cell camera, it's a cell modem, and it's a camera, and it sends snapshots to the cloud. And it's a good system, but it's not the, streaming video. It's not high resolution video. Not a lot of integrators can do that kind of solution because it's not easy. And if you don't know about kind of the back end, these, the Ciclus and the Ceragons and that technology, if you don't know it, you're never going to solve that, that solution, or never going to deliver a really reliable solution. So we've really been happy that we found you guys, and it's been a great partnership so far.
That's excellent, and I'm certainly happy that we've got great integrators like Griffin Systems and great customers who are there in the end, and their towns are benefiting from the technology. That's the goal. Tell me a little bit more about this second town that you're sort of able to start from a clean slate. I understand that when they first contacted you, there was some issue with this sort of main street that had a lot of restaurants and bars and some after-hours rowdy folks who maybe needed a little bit of surveilling. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. When I sat down with the chief of police, he said, here's our main drag. This is where, we have multiple bars, multiple restaurants. It's very busy at night. We're constantly down there with squads, maintaining and managing people at all hours coming in and out of these bars. It's a little bit of a rowdy crowd. And we have a lot of crime that happens that starts there and then spreads to our town. And we're really getting pressure from the people that live in our town to really clean this up. And we're having an issue we just don't have, it's a small town. We don't have the police force to be able to be out there 24/7 and cover everything. And so we said, well, let's sit down and really look at the hot spots and really start to put a camera surveillance system in place that's going to be a major tool and help you become more proactive with your policing than reactive, and really start to help manage your resources, because you have limited resources as far as how many police you have, how many squads you can put out there. Let's really put this tool in squads so that they can pull up any camera from any part of town. Let's bring all this video back to dispatch, where you have multiple people watching the town. So when an incident does happen, or if something is starting, you can target that area, send the right resources to where it is, and dissolve it before it gets to become a bigger issue. And so we sat down, we went through, and we put together a phased approach, because obviously there's budget involved, and you really need to be able to see, okay, let's get a foundation of what we really need right off the bat, and then here are some of the other areas that we are going to want to look at kind of in the next phase once we get our next budget. So what we did is we designed a system, and we really, Ceragon now is bigger. Ciclu was a smaller company at that point, but we really had that interaction with the people. It wasn't just here's the product and here's a spec sheet. We dealt with, people at Ciclu that were just amazing and really ready to help and really involved in the design, and any questions we had or any, adjustments that we made, it was a team effort, and we really felt that support was amazing for us in getting into this project. And when we rolled out the first kind of phase of this surveillance system for them, in the first week, everybody was, when I came in after and I just said, hey, how are things been going? Police chief, big smile on his face. All the different detectives that came in were just like, why didn't we have this 10 years ago? Like, this is like, everybody was in a happier mood. Yeah.
I want to pause you for a second there, because I'm curious to know, in terms of priorities, what were some of the things that they wanted covered with the cameras in phase one? What was top of the list? Sort of run me down the first 5 or 10 items that they wanted to make sure they had coverage, aside from just up and down that main drag that you mentioned. Can you give us a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, for sure. So the main kind of issues that they were having were street racing down this main drag, and it's a very popular restaurant bar area, but also, yeah, people just hanging out, 2, 3 in the morning outside. People, it's a residential area as well, so people are living above these restaurants and bars, and so they constantly were having calls of, hey, someone is drunk out in the middle of the street, and all kinds of just craziness was going on, at all hours. So they really wanted to manage just how do we know when things are starting to escalate, and how do we make it well known that there's cameras here, where we know what's going on now. There isn't a blind spot. We really want to find out, make people aware that this kind of stuff that was happening prior to us getting the system in isn't going to happen anymore, because you're on camera. We know what's going on. This isn't going to be something that we're just going to try to hide or avoid at this point. So that was the big thing was, getting reducing not only the sort of the craziness that would happen at all hours, but the crime of breaking into cars getting stolen, altercations, fights, damage to property. That the mayor and everyone else was like, this is our main drag that we want to show off, and we want to, this is our this is our town. We don't want to show that it's run down, or it's it's not a safe place to come and have dinner and go to the bar and everything else. So they really wanted to kind of clean it up and make it a better place for its residents, and that just putting that system in that first week, it was kind of night and day to what it was before.
Right. Any town, any municipality is going to have limitations in terms of resources and budget for police officers. And if you can have those extra eyes there to know where they need to be and when they need to be there, and so that they can respond quickly, certainly that's going to help work for them to deal with crimes sort of in real time as they're happening, or respond after the fact. But I also know that in terms of the visibility of cameras, just having the public see the cameras there can work as a deterrent for some people who may have had one or two too many beverages in the evening, or may feel like they need to show off for their friends outside the bar and start a fight or something like that. Tell me a little bit about the difference in the choices made in different areas. About some places you want to have very low visibility or even concealed cameras, and in other places you want them to be incredibly visible. How do you make those determinations? How does that consultation work with a municipality? How does it work?
Yeah, for sure. Mostly with street cameras, you want that deterrent. So you want the camera to, look like a camera, although you also play into the mayor and the residents of that town, and they don't want something. They want the cameras, but they don't want it to look gaudy and look ridiculous up there. So we come in, we try and pull all of that together, where we're like, okay, we're trying to deter crime from this area, but maybe we're going to the street poles are all black, so we're gonna paint or bring in black cameras that would blend in. You would be able to see the camera, and the coverage is there, but it's not going to look like someone just came and slapped it up there. So we definitely look at the aesthetics, and that plays into it. But at the end of the day, for us, for Griffin Systems, it's about the video quality and what we're getting out of the cameras. So if the cameras, the deterrent is there, but if on the back end the video and the data isn't doing anything, or isn't well enough, or the quality isn't there to make a arrest or find something that happened, it's not. That's really is our focus. So we might design something that you'd look at it and you're like, why would you do this, 3 cameras instead of this one? Well, this is the idea behind it, because we don't want to miss anything, or we want to make sure that we have the highest resolution, best images on these specific hotspots. So that kind of plays into it. And It also it's a growing it changes. So, one part of town could be a really hot spot for, you know, a couple months or a couple weeks or maybe a season. There's areas where in the summer this is crazy. The parks, everything else can be nuts, but then in the wintertime it's completely empty. So you want a solution that's flexible enough if you need to move it or if you need to scale back a certain area and then increase another area. You need to have that fluidity of not only the network but the cameras in general to be able to kind of roll with things and continue to grow as the community grows, or new buildings happen, or they put in a new park, or there's just things that you need to really think big picture, not just, okay, we're just going to solve this solution really quick and then not worry about, well, if we put a camera here, they're going to want a camera down the next block as well. So you kind of take all those into account for sure.
Yeah, and I'm certain that wireless technology versus something like fiber, where you've got to get permits and dig trenches and all of that, the wireless technology for connectivity gives you all sorts of flexibility in making changes that are required in the future. And speaking of wireless technology, I know that high quality multi-megapixel cameras are really basically just half of the equation. Without the connectivity solution on the back end, without that network sending enormous amounts of data from dozens or in some situations perhaps hundreds of cameras, it's just not possible. The cameras are essentially useless. Tell us a little bit, if you can, about the role that network plays in enabling all of this to happen.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of these communities, villages, cities are older. So there's older technology with not only from the electric grid to the lighting to the ability to even have somewhere to put cameras or fiber. So that really they didn't even have the ability to even look at this type of technology or this camera in certain areas because they just couldn't get connectivity without wireless. And a lot of these communities were kind of burned by older wireless technology that wasn't reliable. So they had that kind of bad taste in their mouth of, well, I know, the state did this overreaching kind of wireless program, and they set everything up, but 2 weeks into it, the camera went down and we never had it again. Or the camera was so unreliable and the image quality was so bad because the wireless was so latency and the bandwidth wasn't there that it really couldn't deliver back. So we didn't use it. So there was, I think at first with some of these, it was that education and that challenge of things have changed a lot definitely in the last 20 years. But as the technology kind of got better and better on the wireless side, more reliable on the wireless side, higher bandwidth on the wireless side, it gave us the ability to create these networks. Because when we were designing things in the past, it was, okay, what buildings do we have that are on your network already? What is there a public works building? Is there the police department, the fire? We could put cameras on the buildings and we could connect them through their network, but there was no street cameras or putting them in areas where there was no other, facility. It just wasn't the case. And as we've seen with, these rollouts, we've also seen where, we start to think and the wheels start rolling on, well, I have this park district building, or I have this public works building that we're paying, Comcast or AT&T an enormous amount of money for their internet, and we have 3 people in there. So if we do a point-to-point bridge with SICLU over to our police station, now it's direct into our network. We've cut that cost, that ongoing cost. So that just educating them on what is possible with the cameras and what network to support that's opened up the floodgates on, okay, how do we reduce our monthly costs on internet or on connectivity? How can we use these really reliable and high bandwidth point-to-point radios to kind of reduce the costs overall for us? And that's that's kind of been a, we're a camera integrator and we're a security integrator, but we get pulled into those, like, I have a building, we don't have any cameras on it. We might put cameras on it down the road, but we would just like it onto the same network. What can you do? Well, Ciclo, it's an easy solution. Let's set up a point to point, and now we're building a network that, they don't have to ongoingly pay, someone else to get their connectivity for. So that's been kind of the cool thing about these radios and this technology is just the bandwidth has been a game changer. When you have 500 a gig type speed, 2 gig type speed between buildings with a wireless point to point, it opens up a lot of doors and a lot of interesting applications that maybe you didn't think of that was possible. So we're becoming, I say we're security and we're surveillance and we're cameras, but we're also becoming kind of the wireless leader with these kind of networks as well, which is exciting.
Yeah, it's remarkable the difference in capacity and what that opens up when you move from something like 5 gigahertz to 60 gigahertz, and suddenly you could do so much more, and you can provide so much more, and it's pretty remarkable. You talked a little bit about phase one, and you gave us some details. What are they looking at for phase two from you guys? What are you offering there?
Yeah, so phase two, phase one was kind of the center of town. Phase two is kind of the spokes that get to the perimeter. So a lot of these towns want to know who's coming and going, especially if there's an incident or if there's a crime. They want to know where they came from, where they exited, when crimes are happening, what is the main artery getting in and out. So what we've done is we've secured and we focused on the main kind of retail, kind of the center of town. But now that only leads to, okay, well, let's get the perimeter and see, is there an area that maybe we didn't think of where people are coming in, not being noticed, and breaking into houses, stealing cars, doing all kinds of vandalism. I mean, there's crews that come and do, you saw with the stealing of cars or catalytic converters. That was, a big thing where you just have these crime crews that would come in and just hit a town and knock out 200 or 300 cars and be out. So they really want to focus on the perimeter. And with that perimeter, they're sharing, and now they're talking with their neighboring village or their neighboring town, which they might have not done before. There was kind of like, we protect our own, but now that we have the technology and they can, if Griffin has done their video as well, let's share, our cameras and get a better idea of, okay, how is everyone coming into our area, not just our town. So that's been kind of the next phase is, it's once you get in to an area and you kind of get that happier feeling of visibility and sort of comfort of being able to control things a little bit more. Now it just kind of spreads out and say, okay, let's really get some of the areas that maybe we didn't, think of, or we couldn't get to right off the bat. And let's really get a better understanding of how people are interacting with our town.
So you mentioned the idea of this sort of possibility of as one town and a town next to it both are using Griffin Systems and Ciclo by Ceragon technology. There's the potential to share these eyes, this security, this visibility that they didn't have before. What about them? I'm curious about the sort of the flexibility and scalability that a wireless network like a Ciclo by Ceragon network will provide, and how that impacts the decisions you make in terms of a phase 3 perhaps, or growing and overlapping these two towns. How does that factor into your decisions?
Yeah, for sure. Before we got into designing these kind of networks based on Ceragon and Ciclo's technology, we never even stepped foot in a water tower before. And that when you go into towns, you've got the water tower, you've got the police tower, and you don't realize all the technology that sit on these higher, areas to really connect everything. So we you put in a backhaul on the highest points in town. So it's the water tower, it's these radio towers, and now that opens it up to areas that you couldn't get to before. If I can see the water tower, now I can create another point to point to get it to the water tower, and then it feeds into that high bandwidth backhaul that gets everything back to the police station. So that, when we first came in, and a lot of these towns are very, they're not easy because there's a ton of trees. It's a town where
Right.
there's a ton of tree coverage, and so there's different intersections that they want to cover, but we really have to be aware of the design and how to get the point to point back reliably, and that kind of opens it up to that coverage that they want to do. So yeah, it's we have a climbing crew that I'm definitely not I get up 40 feet, and that's about my height, and as I get, and I'm into my 50s now, and so now I think I'm getting even less. Like 20 feet might be my limit, but we have crews that go up, and they're up 150, 200 feet to mount these radios, and get us connectivity. So yeah, it's once you have the kind of that backhaul in place, and you have those bigger kind of markers, now that kind of is the hub and spoke where you can start to look, and expand from there. So we've never had to with Ciclu, with the backhaul, the bandwidth has just been so good and so high that we haven't, when we've added more, we haven't had to upgrade the backhaul because it's been supportive of that going forward. And I think that goes a long way with these towns where they're like, well, you built this starting out, and we love that we're not having to rip it up and add more. We can build off of what we've already purchased, and that goes a long way of just knowing that budgets are tight, and what can we do to expand this network without having to do a total upgrade on the back end of it. So.
Yeah, I've spoken with a lot of customers, with a lot of integrators who sometimes are called in because some other vendor may have sold something that lasts for 5 or 10 years, and then it's a rip and replace. And the great stories I get to hear about how these radios, be it from Ciclu or from Ceragon, are still going a decade more plus, and they almost kind of get not retired, but put out as redundancy in sort of a ring and hub and spoke kind of configuration where, they're still there just in case. And as things, obviously, you're going to get better technology, you're going to get more capacity, you're going to get greater speeds, but the radios just keep going and going, and that's fantastic. Speaking about the future, 20 years in the past, what do you see going forward? How do you see technology evolving? How do you see the solutions you provide your customers evolving and changing over the coming years, and hopefully another, I don't know how long you want to go before you retire, but let's call it another decade or
Yeah,
so.
for sure.
What do you see?
Yeah, my daughter just started college. She's in her second year in New York, so I at least have, and I've got a second one behind her. So I'm good for at least 10 years going forward to support that. But I think video it continues to increase in resolution. It's kind of plateauing a little bit. We're at a kind of an inflection point with that, but as you see with everything, it's all about artificial intelligence, and it's getting kind of smarter systems. And with AI, with cameras, it's really about having the ability to make your review quicker, and you're proactive with how you're viewing things. So it's going out there, it's automating plates. So you're pulling in plates, you're able to do searches on plates, and that's kind of was the start of kind of the smart. But now you're also going into where this camera can tell the difference between a car, a truck, a motorcycle, a person. It can tell the difference between someone wearing a blue shirt, a red shirt. You can start to do those searches and those alerts based on color, by device, and so you're really, that's going to continue to go, I think through the roof as things in the commercial space and the space of just as cameras and smartphones and everything continue to get smarter and smarter, so will the technology on the surveillance side. It's really about having a system that can do a lot of work for not too many people and really be proactive in it. And it's an exciting time. I mean, I think there's definitely going to be some interesting things coming down the next couple of years, especially with AI. And I think there's some limits that need to be put in place so things aren't going to get too crazy too quick. But there
Right.
is that that ability to make something smarter, and with something being smarter, okay, maybe this can create a safer environment, or this can make my life easier with it. There's always got to be that human interaction to make
Yeah.
technology. It should be a tool. It shouldn't be taking the place. But yeah, I'm excited to see where things go in the next couple of years for sure.
It is incredible just over the past 12 months how quickly things have evolved with AI in terms of the software that's available to help us all do the job we do. And certainly when it comes to public safety, detection, prevention, even some sort of investigative possibilities in real time is pretty remarkable. And having high speed, high capacity, high bandwidth cameras around a city, especially in areas that are full of traffic, full of crime potentially, can provide a level of safety that hasn't been there before. But of course, the discussion has to be had about the privacy and public safety, and where we draw the line as a global civilization.
Sure.
Paul, 20 years is an enormous accomplishment, and I congratulate you for that.
Thank you.
And I wish the best for the next 10 years as you as you provide for your family and everyone
Thanks,
who
Jerry.
works there, and the kids in school. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Take
My
care.
pleasure. Anyone who is in the Chicago area, before you
Yes.
go, they want to get in touch with you. What is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, our website is griffinsys.com, GRIFFONSYS.com. That's probably the best way to reach us. And go to the website, put in a request. You can obviously call us directly as well. We'll put that information out there, and we're happy to help with design or questions, or anything in the technology space in Chicagoland area as well as the Midwest. So
Excellent. And for anyone who's not in the Chicago area who wants to benefit from the amazing Ciclu by Ceragon technology, or Ceragon technology as a whole, feel free to check us out on the website at ceragon.com. Until next time, this is Ceragon Connects. I'm Jeremy Ladner. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.